Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Randy Luby, I see, is with us today. If you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I certainly will. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the October 21st Board of County Commissioners. On my right, representing District 2 is Commissioner Kevin Cook, and on my left is Commissioner Aaron Mays, representing District 3. I'm Bill Rippon, and I represent District 1. I would like to make one change to the agenda. I would like to move
H2.
G1,
No, H2. H2.
H2.
Yep.
Okay, I would like to move item H2 to right behind the proclamation and presentation by Vallejo today. Okay?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, first item.
Proclamations, presentations. Number 1, presentation of Vallejo's quarterly report. Bill Persinger, CEO.
Morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the time. Thank you for your support. I'm pretty sure you got probably 2 reports there. Always make sure there's one on your desk, but if you refer to that, Commissioner Mays, look forward to seeing you later this week to take a look at our facilities, and welcome to your new post.
Thank you.
Well, you know, as always, I want to start off by saying thank you. We wouldn't be here as the county's mental health provider if it wasn't for more than 50 years of funding from Shawnee County. So many thanks to you folks and taxpayers you represent. I have honored guests in the room, our board chairman, Frank Henderson, standing room only. And Frank is a good and faithful representative of the public on the board. And then Dick Klein sitting here with his retirement supervisor. So when Dick's not volunteering on the board, I'm sure that he's busy at home. We do want to take just a few minutes this morning, and I hope I'm not touching any buttons on here. I should, because me and electronics don't get along well. So just real quickly, I want to review with you what's going on with mental health centers. The financial report that should be in front of you this morning. We were able to get that done middle of last week, and I shipped it on over to Jane electronically. At the current time, through the end of September, we're showing a deficit of $568,000. At about $60,000 a day, you can do the math on how many days we're behind. We hope that corrects a little bit before the end of the year, but we think it's going to be a pretty rough year. As always, state grants and Medicaid, along with county funding, kind of form our 3-legged stool, and 2 of those are just not coming through as expected. But we do want to present that information to you, so you'll have that. Our contract is set for next year. We appreciate the support, but we do want you to know we're having a little bit of a rough go of it. We aren't in danger of laying anybody off or stopping any programs. It's just that, you know, we can't get done some of the things that need to get done in terms of staff and programming, some things we'd like to do. But so we're working on a course correction. We hope the state legislature continues to, and the governor's office, continue to support mental health. We also hope for CAN-CARE expansion, Medicaid expansion. Of course, our big challenge, only serving adults, is providing care to the uninsured and the underinsured. It's better than $2 million obligation that we have every year in charity care to serve the uninsured, and that money's just got to come from somewhere, since we can't turn people away, and we can't really regulate the amount of care that we give them. But so there's our financial statement. As you look over that, if you have questions anytime today, and just anytime, you know my phone is on 24 hours a day, and I'm available to you to be accountable. Our 3rd annual Unmasking Stigma fundraiser is coming up on Saturday, November 16th. It'll be at the Manor Conference Center. Daryl Strawberry, a famous baseball player, is going to come and talk about his story of recovery and inspire hope, and make sure that we can help keep that door open for those who want to recover. We're also going to honor Dr. Walt Miniger and Chef Adam from the White Linen, as well as his wife Casey, have been good supporters the last couple of years with an annual event there. And so we'll also be honoring those folks. So that gets us through. We did receive a $7,200 gift from the Prairie Band Potawatomi Bingo folks. That was an unexpected and very, very welcome gift that helps move our program along. We're hoping for about $70,000 in sponsorships for the third annual fundraiser, the one in November, where Mr. Strawberry is going to speak. I think we're right at 71,000 in corporate sponsors now. So with ticket sales, some other things, we hope to do okay with that event. Our co-responder grant, the second shift, which is partly funded by the state of Kansas, has been funded. So we're able now to have a social worker, a Vallejo caseworker on the street 24 hours a day with the police department. So that program is going to continue. Local collaborations, take a look at your leisure there at the number of things that we're involved in, particularly helping with childhood and family homelessness through a program called Impact Avenues. The city and the rescue mission have taken lead spots there, and Vallejo has joined and have a number of people coming through that program to get them hooked up with services they might not otherwise have available to them. We're working with Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods, doing some work with Safe Streets, just a number of things that we think in our mind kind of fit with our mission in terms of public safety and making sure that people who are suicidal, people who have acute psychiatric episodes, people who are homeless, people who need to find work, that they have the quickest access to mental health care that they can get, as well as addiction services. Speaking of addictions, we know that more money is coming out for opioid treatment, and while we see that as a problem here, I think our friends around the county and the city would agree, people who also work, trying to help people recover, would agree that methamphetamine abuse and addictions are our #1 problem. There just isn't a lot of government set aside for the treatment of those problems. So were it not for county funding and city funding, we just wouldn't have a detox program. We wouldn't be there 24 hours a day to help people who need a detox. So just another way for me to say thank you for your ongoing support. We are working closely with Director Oakes from the Health Department on a couple of projects to address the health improvement plan and make sure that our folks have access to care, and also working on a health educator position that would do health promotion, work with people who are high risk and help them get the health care that they need and hopefully save people some dollars. Sure got our fingers crossed, as I might have mentioned a little bit earlier, on Medicaid and CanCare expansion. That would solve a lot of our financial problems at Vallejo. It would make up for a lot of that territory that we cover, serving the uninsured. So we're actually doing a little more than crossing our fingers, praying a lot, going to meetings and just talking to whoever will sit still long enough to listen about the fact of helping our uninsured. Mainly these are people who are working, have jobs, they can't afford health insurance. And so this would be a hand up and not a handout for people who work every day and pay their taxes and trying to raise their families, have access to health care and some way to pay for that. So we do our best to try to move that program along. We're on October 29th, we're going to host a statewide summit, if you will, during the day on community crisis centers. As you'll recall, Vallejo was one of the first 3 mental health centers in the state of Kansas to put up a 24-hour-a-day community crisis center. That's been supported by state government. We're looking for more support there. We're a little bit short, working on that, and along with our colleagues, but we are going to have a summit, gather all the mental health centers from around the state at Vallejo on the 29th and talk about community crisis centers, how we can keep them open, how we can keep them going as an alternative to emergency room visits, psychiatric hospital visits, involuntary stays at the state hospital. The community crisis centers are all ways across the state to divert people from those unnecessary placements. We did gather a little bit of data on the co-responder program. I've been standing up here for 4 years saying I wish we had better data. We have a little bit better data. It's not highly scientific. We can't afford to hire a consultant to come in and tell us that we know we're doing the right thing and get some results. But we did look at 90 plus cases over the last 6 weeks or so and asked ourselves if we hadn't had a Vallejo professional on the street with the Topeka Police Department and if the city and the county and others didn't support that program, what would happen to those people? So of those 90 people that we looked at, just are doing our own internal look, we discovered that probably 20 of those folks would have gone to jail. In reality, 2 went to jail. So we think we're preventing jail placements, and I think that it's just a great program we're able to do out there with the hope of with the support of the community. Still working on better data. We'd like to really prove by bringing in an outside consultant that program really does save emergency room time, jail time, police time, increases public safety. Most of all, though, it gets mental health care right on the street, any hour of the day, to people who need it the most, and that's what really counts right here. But we think we're able to work a little bit more in the head giving you some numbers that, we think we saved about 20 jail placements. I don't know what a jail placement costs, but we think we saved you that traffic at the correctional center. So during the third quarter, we saw 411 people come through our residence. That's our community crisis center, 411 people who are in crisis. Many of those people would have gone on to the state hospital or psychiatric care. The real painful part of that, those people would have gone unserved had it not been there, thanks to the support of the public. Just one of our big uninsured liabilities is running that program. That one program every month costs us $76,000 to serve the uninsured, most of whom stay 2 or 3 or 4 days getting suicide care, crisis intervention for their psychiatric problems. We know that a number of those folks would have to go to some other level of care if we weren't there. Working on getting you some better numbers for that, but we do know we're trying to carry some water on that program, get people the help they need 24 hours a day. Somebody in crisis can pull up to that address 24 hours a day, come in and be evaluated. If I haven't said it before, the address is 400 Southwest Oakley Street, and people could drive up any time of day and within just a few minutes get in front of a licensed professional, licensed mental health professional, get an evaluation, figure out what to do in their crisis situation. Some people stay with us, some go home with supports, some go on to the hospital, but we are there 24 hours a day. With that, I'll pause and want to say again, we're looking forward to hosting Commissioner Mays for a tour of our facilities, as we did Commissioner Rippon when he came on board. We sure appreciate your time that day, Bill, and gave us the idea, well, let's call Mr. Mays and see if he's available. He's gracious with his time. I want to say thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I'll stand for questions, and I'm sure to defer to my governing board members, our president and vice president, Frank and Dick.
Mr. Chairman. Bill, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for the board members that are present. Just a couple of questions. On the
Sure.
co-responder program, you report 680 contacts, and that's for the entire year of 2019. Now, of those 680 contacts...
quarters.
Those are the first 3
Yes, sir.
quarters. For the first 3 quarters of 2019, of those 680, do we also see those persons transition into the residence of the 411 that we saw just in the last quarter?
Some do. Some refuse services. Some we do a screening and they have to be placed in a hospital. Others we help find a place to live, find a job, that kind of thing. But some, Commissioner, will find their way to the crisis center. That's an immediate transport if they can get there themselves or if the police can bring them in. Keep in mind that what we call the residence, which is in regulation called a community crisis center, just of course one of our crisis programs, that's a voluntary program. And so people are not placed there involuntarily.
And I know that in speaking with Director Cole from the Shawnee County Department of Corrections, he informs us that for a person staying at the Department of Corrections without mental health issues, it's close to $100 a day that the taxpayers, subsidize and pay. For a person with mental health illness, that can reach $300 on average per day.
Right.
And so if you diverted 90 persons from jail, even one day,
In a year? Yeah.
in a year, that the taxpayers benefited from that. And so I think that it's a good use of our tax dollars to go
Thank you.
towards mental health rather than to the Department of Corrections. It's a much more economical use of our tax dollars and better services to the public to try to resolve the issues. Of the issues that you're receiving, are you seeing a population that's increasing, staying steady, decreasing over the last quarter or 2019?
Well, it's been steady the last couple of years. And generally, the co-responder program also, hooked in tightly with Sergeant Clam's behavioral health unit with the Topeka Police Department. Those contacts are running low 1,300s to 1,500 a year. The number of people, unduplicated count that we're seeing at the residence, at the Community Crisis Center, the 72-hour program I spoke about, those contacts are running anywhere from high 1,200s to low 1,400 a year. Unduplicated count. Those aren't necessarily the same people, but as you pointed out earlier, there is a crossover. I can't tell you how many, standing here today, how many would come, from an encounter on the street with a law enforcement professional, teamed up with a Vallejo professional. I can't tell you how many of those transition over to the residence. I can find that number out and try to give you that.
That'd be
It's
great.
going to be a floating number, but I can try to get that for you.
Great.
There is a direct tie, though. I mean, one program really feeds off the other and supports the other one, so.
In working with the City of Topeka Municipal Court and their mental health court, and just the court in general, it appears that the number one addiction that we see at the city level is methamphetamine. Would that...
Treatment center, I think their clientele makeup may look similar, it may not. Maybe and maybe you see more opioid addiction there. I don't know. I don't operate in that market, but the public side of the house, services are available to anybody and everybody, regardless of ability to pay. The big number one kind of public health problem we see that I think impacts law enforcement, healthcare, and mental health, and just neighborhood safety would be methamphetamine addiction, followed by alcohol addiction and marijuana abuse would be kind of our top three. And I noticed the director of our alcohol and drug treatment program was out here somewhere. Kathy Walker's out. Do you want to come up and give a speech for 30 or 40 minutes? No, she doesn't. Oh, I meant 3 or 4. Anyway, I think Kathy and her team, Brad Sloan and others would tell you, right along with our friends in law enforcement and judiciary would concur with what you're saying, Commissioner, that methamphetamine is the number one problem we need to attack. It's just that the capacity of the state and federal government right now to support that is a little slim.
Well, it appears that the federal government is really focused in on
They
opioid
are.
addiction.
A couple of more $1 billion released just recently by the president.
And the state is really not focused in on methamphetamine or the federal government, so that really leaves it to Shawnee County to address methamphetamine addiction. And so that's where those funding dollars are coming from, it seems.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Bill, I'd just like to say thank you, you and your staff, your board, for all that you do. I did have one question. Did
Sure.
you work in concert with Barry Feeker in the rescue mission for,
There are,
any?
Frank here is the deputy director at the rescue mission. You know, if it wasn't for the rescue mission and the TPD, Shawnee County Health Department, kind of another kind of three-legged stool, if you will, in terms of, you know, serving the public, particularly people are high risk, people are homeless and have other, you know, serious immediate problems. They're a great partner to us, and anything we can do to support our mission is a good thing. We have staff going in and out of the mission all the time. We tried a pilot program there this summer where we were there to prescribe medication. That went pretty well. Of course, there's no money to continue it, but we do know that the model will work. And so a lot of good things going on. We've done some special projects for the unsheltered who are living along the Kansas River, and the rescue mission's been right out front with that, and we've been honored to walk along with them serving those folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill, thanks for inviting me to tour the facility tomorrow. I've seen it from the outside quite a few times. My kids went to daycare across the street, and I've always appreciated.
I drive real slow when I'm going by there, too.
But I guess I always appreciated, I know when a lot of the new parents would come in, they always had a little trepidation with being across the street from Vallejo, and I think it's great that you guys work with the community around there to make sure there's never any problems.
Thank you.
I mean, in the several years that our kids went there, we never did.
Great.
But I think it's a great service that you do for our community. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much. Look forward to seeing you.
That was the
All good?
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
H2.
Appreciate your time, folks. Take care.
All right. I guess that was the one we, did we say June 1?
H2.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Next item.
Okay, item H, Commission number 2, consideration and discussion of the Family Park and Deer Creek Trail projects, including whether the commission should rescind the previous actions and reauthorize the projects with a new scope and financing.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
may. We took up under the capital outlay budget the discussion of Family Park. That was during our August budget hearing process. And then subsequent to that, we had discussions with bond counsel about bonding up to $10 million. And then finally, we had discussions about a design build versus a bid and then build process. So there were 3 separate actions that the commission took in relation to the Deer Creek Trail Extension and Family Park at 21st and Urish. With Commissioner Mays coming on board as our new commissioner, I had asked this item to be placed on the agenda for discussion and possible consideration so that he has to live with any decisions that we make, and we are not yet broken ground since things have not yet been finalized to the point of being in process. And so I wanted to have him the ability to weigh in as to whether or not we should continue with this path or redesign the scope or talk about the scope. Under Robert's Rules of Order, a proper motion would be a motion to rescind or amend something previously adopted. The Assembly has the opportunity at any point And it does not have to be from a person who voted on it previously, nor a person that was on the prevailing side or the losing side, to amend or rescind a previously adopted action. And that can be taken up at any time. There's no time limit on making it. And the motion would have to be treated like any other motion. And so, and then there is a notice provision that it does not require a notice provision, but I did ask for a notice provision just so the public would have transparency in knowing what we did. So it would be my request, if we could hear from Parks and Rec, they could make discussion of where we're at in the process, and then if the board wishes to rescind or amend our previous action.
When you say rescind, would it be the whole?
No, not necessarily. It would not have to necessarily be a rescission of the entire action, but we could look at one part of it. For example, if we were looking at just the recreational center and saying we want to get more input as to the recreational center. Or if we want to look at the addition of the driving range as opposed to not having a driving range, but what the project scope is. So it would not necessarily be my intent to rescind the entire entity. My concern had always been the amount of the debt that we were looking at taking on and the debt load for Shawnee County, and that's why, and again, Commissioner Mays would be obligated to our previous action.
I think there's been a lot of misconception about this project. A lot of people have said it's a $10 million pickleball facility. It is not. It never has been. And when we bond projects, we don't have to use the whole amount of the bond. It's not like when you get a house loan and you get a loan for $100,000, you're on the hook for $100,000. When we apply for a bond, we can use $2 million of it. We don't have to do any more than that. So we're not on the hook for $10 million. It's a cap.
Right, we took, the action we took was to alert the public of our intent to take out debt up to the $10 million. We would have another action actually formalizing that, but it is a notice to the public of our intent to take out that $10 million, up to. And so, much like if my wife was saying she wanted to go buy furniture, and I said, don't spend up more than $1,000, and she comes back and said, expert. If you want to come to the podium, Bob.
Sure, absolutely.
Give Aaron a context of what we've done.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob. Go directly to the well.
Aaron, my name is Bob Perry, I'm bond counsel. What we did in August was to put the county in a position to have the ability to borrow up to $10 million for a project yet to be defined in scope and nature. We basically chose $10 million because as our debt comes off the tax rolls, that $10 million financed over 10, 15 years will have a zero impact on anything, because debt gets paid off annually, you replace it with new debt for capital projects that have useful lives that make sense to finance. And so we didn't commit the county to borrowing anything. We gave the county the opportunity to borrow up to $10 million for Parks and Rec projects yet to be defined. And in the interim, several things had to happen. We had to do a publication once a week, 2 consecutive weeks, 30-day protest period ran, an insufficient protest amount was filed. You now have the ability to borrow up to $10 million should you choose. If you choose not to, that's fine. You can just let it sit there. You're not committed to it now or ever. But it does give you greater options and flexibility should you not use all of the 10 over the next several years as you try to identify what projects may or may not need to be financed. So the whole point of what we did in August basically was to set the commission up and the county staff and the people that are going to be involved in the project the ability to ascertain what is available, what is the scope, where do we want to go, how do we want to go, and what are our options. And the reason why we chose the Public Building Commission avenue was that would give us the opportunity to achieve probably the lowest interest cost available in the public markets when you choose to issue the debt.
If we rescinded this, would this damage our reputation or our dealings with this bond company?
No, but Bill, I wouldn't recommend you rescind anything because there's nothing to make a decision on yet.
Right.
I mean, you've got is it an RFQs out for a design build or?
Right.
Or it's getting prepared? I mean, you really need just to kind of see what the facts are based upon what the experts say. You can get this for this much money, and you can get this for this much money with regards to the park piece of this and the pickleball piece of this. As far as the trails and whatnot, you know, I mean, we've been building trails since I've been doing this with the county, and those costs seem to be pretty well set off and on, depending upon, you know, the terrain and the concrete and whatnot. But you're in a position where a lot of elected bodies aren't, in the aspect that we've fulfilled the conditions precedent required by the statute to issue up to $10 million. If you rescind it, we're starting over.
I think the beauty of the RFQ is it gives us tremendous flexibility. We can get quotes on all different phases of whatever the final design looks like. And then we can decide what we're going to pay for, or what we're not gonna pay for. And, but as part of this plan, as part of this RFQ, they would be doing public meetings to get your input on what we want in that park. And I assume there's probably gonna be some pickleball involvement in that, just looking around this room. But we wanna get public input, get a plan. If we scrap everything right now and just put in a pickleball facility, then we've scrapped our master plan. This gives us an avenue to have a good master plan for the whole park, and then we can pick and choose what we wanna pay for and when. It's my understanding we don't have to, we can bond a certain amount of money like next year, and then the year after that, we can bond some more. Is that correct?
Yeah, you could do nothing with this $10 million, and it's not gonna have an effect whatsoever. But if you rescind it, you've lost the opportunity to address some things that you might want to address without starting completely over. All right, and a lot of work was done to get you to the point where you are. And it's just not work by me, it was staff. You know, a lot of work was to get you to focus as to where you guys are today. Carol, you know, did a lot of work trying to get the petition prepared. I'm sure she'd like to do it again. She had the opportunity, but you know, the thing is you're in a position where you have some flexibility. You have up to $10 million to pay for Parks and Rec projects. That's the only limitation I put in the documents I drafted in August. It has to be for Parks and Rec, because that was what the discussion I had with Betty and the staff was about.
It gives us tremendous flexibility.
It
And
gives you
we do need funding for the Deer Creek Trail.
Right. And I would agree with that completely. The one item, I guess, for clarification from a comment you made previously was on the request for the design build. We do lose the potential of having credibility with contractors and designers if we're not sure about what we want. An architect and an engineer, they're not going to want to design projects and spend their time if we're not committed to the process. And so if we're committed to doing the rec center and the pickleball and the whole 9 yards, we need to let them know that. If we're looking at, let's do one piece of it now, but let us know what the cost would be to add on the other parts in the future, I think we just need to be clear with those contractors from the beginning. Again, so that the county does not lose face and does not lose credibility in that community. Because there is a lot of work that goes into designing a recreational center as opposed to designing the pickleball facility.
Certainly.
And I think that, you know, Hughes Court, it is at capacity. I'm not in disagreement with that. It is in a residential neighborhood. It's never been against the pickleball, but looking at what is the best ways to address that community and those enthusiasts of pickleball. So.
So so would you suggest changing the scope of?
This is where I had asked for it to be placed on the agenda to allow Commissioner Mays, this is in his district, to allow his input and 2 cents worth of education. I mean, he's had a whopping 2 weeks to come up to speed on it, to have his thought process on where we're at and what direction we should be headed. I think that it is important that the county know that once we've made a decision, we're committed to that decision.
And I realize he's been on there for a couple of weeks and probably hasn't had the opportunity to view a lot of other cities and see what they're doing. And he did go along on the trip to Montgomery. I think that was good, although we didn't get to see a lot of park and recreational facilities, but
We did see a pickleball.
There's a whitewater facility that
Yeah.
they're, yeah.
I didn't go on that side trip, but there are some communities in Kansas City, of course, Manhattan, Lawrence, and it's good to go and view and see what they're doing, what they're up to. You know, we have a problem in Shawnee County when we have 40% of the people making $40,000 a year more living outside Shawnee County. Let me say that again, 40% of the people making over $40,000 live outside our county. That's a staggering number. And we need to do some things to recruit and retain people here. And I think it's projects like this, it's pickleball, things like that, that helps. Those can be game changers. And I think we need to invest a little bit in trying to keep people here, pull people in. A lot of companies, they watch our meetings, and they want to see that we're creating an environment that they want to try to do business in this town. And I think we have an obligation, not only to the people on the west side they don't have much in the way of recreation over there. There's not a lot over there. They're a long ways from anything. And I think we owe those people. I think it also just helps retain people here in Topeka, and it's a good recruiting tool, so, anyway.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Quick question for you. You said that the $10 million bonding authority is, the only limitation is that it has to be for parks and recreation, not necessarily family park, but.
No, I restricted it, I'm sorry to interrupt, Aaron, but I restricted it to Parks and Rec projects.
Okay.
And that was based upon a series of discussions that Betty and I have had over the last 2 years, a year and a half. And based upon instructions that Betty had given me from Bob, frankly. I was under the impression that whatever other items that may or may not need to be addressed through financing weren't there yet. There wasn't a consensus.
Okay. I do have some other questions, but I don't know that you're the appropriate person to ask them of.
One, before we if we were to look at, since we have up to $10 million, in the Shawnee North pool, when we had the baby pool that came back and the bid for the concrete work, and concrete prices have gone up dramatically over the last 2 years. And the bids that came back far exceeded what our budget allowed. Would we be able to use some of that bonding then towards that, even though we...
Kevin, if we have deferred maintenance or Parks and Rec deferred maintenance, and it's an item that is, makes sense to finance, yeah, it just, the only limitation on those documents I prepared is Parks and Rec property of the county.
How much notice do we have to give when we actually commit to borrowing the money?
Well, for me to prepare the offering documents and work with the underwriters and Betty and Cindy's staff and whatnot to kind of start the process of educating investors, we ought to have a bare bones description of what we're doing. I mean, right now you have less than a bare bones description of what we're doing to sell bonds, because all I did was say Parks and Recreation improvements, including 21st and Yearish, family park. I mean, what does that mean?
I think that's why we want to have public input on this, and that was part of the RFQ, is to get public input. That's where we'd like to go. I would like to kind of steer us away from using bonded money for deferred maintenance. I think painting drinking fountains and glazing windows is operational money. When you bond something, I'd like for whatever we're doing to last longer than the bond money that it takes to pay off the bond.
It has to be an analysis of, what is the capital improvement and what its useful life. And then, the way it's done for taxes and financing is, in the documents I prepare, there's a gross allocation of some proceeds. If it's got like a 7-year life or less, there's some allocation of proceeds to early maturities as opposed to later maturities. What you choose to finance and how and when is kind of a policy decision. I just have to deal with the results sometimes, as well as a little direction of yes or no. And you can't buy paper. That's pay salaries. Those are capital. They have no capital life, useful life.
So it would be a major project or something that has a long-term life expectancy.
Yeah, but, in today's, I don't want to beat this to death, but, what I learned 35, 40 years ago, long-term useful life doesn't exist anymore, because we finance software that has 6-month useful life.
Wow.
That's a discussion for another day.
Yeah. It is, but that's, fixing a concrete pool is usually financed, because that usually has, if it's done right, 20-year plus life.
I wouldn't have any problems with a fix like that. That has some longevity to it, but,
The reason why I came into this morning was, frankly, these are my documents I drafted. I know why I drafted them. I've got the experience of drafting them, and I didn't think it was really fair just to dump it on Jim and make him do it. That's.
and I wanted to mention too, with the trail, with the, we had kind of ear tagged some of this money to go for the Deer Creek Trail. We really need that in place because we have match money from federal grants, and we need that, to pay our share of the grant. So that's an important aspect of this whole project.
Well, the way we've set this up is you have the ability to advance those funds and reimburse ourselves from bond proceeds when it's time to issue the bonds.
Okay.
And so if we're in a spot where we need to make a commitment in order to not lose a grant or a portion of a grant, and that commitment is a payment, we can make that payment and just reimburse ourselves with bond proceeds when we issue the bonds.
I wanted to say too, there's no need to raise taxes. I've heard that out there on the streets, that we're gonna have to raise taxes to pay for this. I don't see that in the cards, and I think it's something we can afford to do. We don't have, like I said, we don't have to spend the $10 million, and
But with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, the tax issue comes into our principal and interest payment that Audit Finance Director Greiner had looked at, and where the county's debt ratio was at, and not raising taxes this year, but what our obligation would be for ongoing years, and with the mill levy, and whether or not we would have to raise our mill levy in order to meet our obligations. Those are the things that we have to take into consideration, because once we bond the money, that is a debt obligation that we're going to be committed to for the length of that debt. So,
but we currently have a lot of bonded projects. This is nothing new. Is Betty here?
she is.
Betty
Standing.
Greiner, Director of Administrative Services.
And he's standing in the hallway. How many projects do we have bonded currently? Just a ballpark.
That we're still paying on?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I really do not even have an idea.
Okay.
Because, most of our bondings are for 15 years. So over those 15 years, there are a lot of projects that we have bonded that are completed, but that we're still paying debt service on.
My point is, we bond a lot of projects. It's the way we do a lot of capital improvement projects. we couldn't afford to do some of these projects unless we bonded them, so.
But, and again, in all due respect, in the 7 years that I've been a commissioner, we've bonded maybe less than 10, 5?
I would say probably less than 10, but we've had some major ones like the jail kitchen and the aquatic center. Off the top of my head, I'm going blank, so.
But we don't do
But we do, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we do look at the life of the project. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying. I don't want to bond something that is not long-term in nature. I don't want us to be paying bond money, debt service on something that is already outdated. So we generally try to really look at that and only bond those things that have a longer life.
I don't know what would have longer life than a park. But, and speaking of that, this is a park that was in our master plan for the whole park system. This was pointed out as a deficiency in this area of town. So we are just following the park master plan and trying to develop a community park in this area. There's been, like I said, a lot of misinformation about what this is going to look like. I've even heard people say there were indoor pickleball courts, and I don't know where that came from. The other day on the news, I noticed that it said, we now have a plan. We don't have a plan right now. We have a concept. And a concept is just that. It's just a concept. It's something that generates excitement, gives people some ideas. But until we get public input, we really don't know just what this is going to look like, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Betty, if you could, when we talk about the debt, we would have our principal and interest payments, but we also have the operating expenses of any new project to consider from an audit
Yes.
finance director's
That's right.
perspective. And so if you could just address just that financing part of it and some of the concerns that are out in the public, and maybe, as Commissioner Rippon has said, set to rest some of those concerns and misnomers that might be out.
Okay, we do have, as you have said, we have quite a bit of debt, and that debt pays off each year. We set up our debt so that we are paying principal each year. We do not have it set up, we do a series of bonds, so that way we have some debt, some principal being paid off each year on each of our issues. And so then, of course, there are debt issues that are paying off each year. The way we have it set up right now, for 2020, we budgeted $300,000, which would cover the interest for $10 million. We do have debt service that is falling off, so to speak, in the remaining years that would cover debt service on $10 million. So our allocation of our budget for debt service would not need to change because of this issuance. Now, if we do not issue this, the amount of debt service we would need would be a smaller amount. So that's why he's saying at this point in time, there would not need to be an increase in the mill levy if this debt was issued. As has been said many times, there is no date this debt has to be issued by. And as your financial person, I would look at what is best for the county and not issuing that until it makes the most financial sense. Generally, we try to put off until we need the money, unless sometimes there is a situation where we look at issuing something up front, even maybe before we need it, if interest rates are going up and we want to take advantage of that. Because if you're looking at a slight interest increase over 15 years can be a lot of money. So we do look at that, and we have to watch that. That is one reason that we do go ahead and get authority to do this on anything that we're looking at doing it. We get these requirements out of the way, the waiting period, and all of the, the public, I don't mean get it out of the way, but we get those completed so that we can watch those interest rates. And then we try to get the best deal for the county. But there again, we look at it, the whole big picture, and when we're going to need that money, when is the best time to bond it, and how much?
From our audit finance director's perspective, when we take on a project, a new project such as the pickleball courts or the recreational center, but really the recreational center, we're looking at not just our construction costs, but our operational costs.
Right, and that we have not taken into consideration any of, in these costs for the debt service. That is just purely for building it. Now, if it's pickleball courts, the operational cost will be very different than it is for a recreation center. But the operational costs of anything will have to be absorbed or paid for through a department budget. Generally, in this case, it would be Parks and Rec's budget that would have to take on the operating costs of anything at that park.
And so, a lot of times in our goal for our pools, we try to have a cost recovery. And so pickleballers might see a cost for using the, I mean, Hughes Court, there's no cost.
Right.
But if we were looking at the facility at 21st and Urish, there may be a cost for a round of pickleball.
Right.
And so,
And you have to look, different facilities have different cost recovery. Some items you can get a higher percentage of cost recovery than others. And some will, never be able to recover their costs.
So
Some
there-
will,
There's potential for revenue to offset some of the operating costs.
That's
is the
correct.
Bottom line.
yes.
Yeah, see if I had any other things I wanted to bring up here. Any other,
Commissioner Reyes?
you have any comments?
Well, yeah, we've talked about how I've been on the commission for all of 2 weeks now. And I would say that I'm pretty well versed in the benefits of pickleball. In that short amount of time, it's been about all I hear about. And you've talked about some misconceptions. And I think there are some misconceptions about my intention based on the things that I've been hearing in email form and text message form over the last few days. In no way do I want to cancel everything. I think that people think that there is an idea that I want to just rescind everything and nix this project altogether, and that's not the case. I do think that where I have a problem is the RFQ that was approved with the budget of up to $8 million. And I believe the reason for the $8 million was there was an amount that was going to be allocated for the Deer Creek Trail extension, which I'm also in favor of. In my conversations with several people, I asked, where did that number come from? And the common answer is that we just made it up.
Jim, you might
We
have
just-
a more eloquent answer, but. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Made up sounds unprofessional.
Well, let me just kind of expand before you answer. I mean, what I keep hearing also is that pickleball courts are cheap. They're 1 million to maybe 1.5 to do the whole thing. And I realize that what we're trying to accomplish is more than just pickleball courts. But when I also look at the $10 million bonding authority and learning that it could be used in other parks as well, I sort of feel that issuing this RFQ in its current form hamstrings us to where we have to do it in that park. And I know that there are other needs. I know there are other capital improvements that need to be done throughout the county. And I feel like we could probably, in this case, perhaps get something very nice for less than $8 million. Because I know when we send out this RFQ for $8 million, every single bid that we get back is going to be for $8 million. and they may go over budget on top of that. So, I mean, I want to leave some wiggle room, I think, that, you know, if we did this in a phased manner and perhaps sent this RFQ out for a lower bid from the start, and then came back in a few years and evaluated our progress, you know, perhaps that's a more measured approach. And so, please, Jim.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Kraus, Shawnee County Councilor. I was hoping I would be able to avoid coming to the podium on this discussion, but here I am. Wiggle room is the right term to talk about 8 million versus 2 million, and it really was building wiggle room into the portion that is our required contribution. We've got a partnership with the state of Kansas on the Deer Creek Trail, and we will be making a contribution, so will the state, on building that out. And we wanted to make sure we had sufficient funds to meet that, whatever that obligation can be. It's probably most likely, and our confidence is high on that, it will be less than 2 million, but we wanted to make sure we had a sufficient amount in there. So we started with 2 million for Deer Creek is the most we would probably ever need, and then we went, that's where the 8 million came from. It was a staff suggestion, and that's what we presented in the memorandum that was voted on for the RFQ, and that's what was adopted.
653,000 is the state obligation. Is that correct?
Did you say the state obligation?
Or our matching obligation was 653,000?
It was more around 700,000, but part of that, the design work, the right-of-ways and those types of things have already been approved to be paid out of the Parks and Rec Building Maintenance Fund. So when you take that out, the amount that we are currently absolutely obligated to is $496,500. So, but if that bid, and then the state's department is almost 2 million. If the bid comes in higher than they estimate, then we have to pay 100% of anything over the estimate.
Okay.
And we've been fortunate on the Event Center project. Things are moving along on schedule as expected with bids, but if you go back to the North Aquatic Center, and we bid out doing work there, and that came back higher. So that's why we wanted to build in room, just to be safe.
Well, I believe that answers a portion of the question, but could you speak to where the $10 million number came from?
I can.
Okay, please.
When last summer, we refunded some of our debt. We reduced our interest costs by about $500,000. In the ratings calls that we have with Moody's, they always ask, what do you anticipate your future long-term debt needs being, as well as what do you anticipate issuing over the next couple of years? One of the numbers that came up, Betty came up with and the bankers came up with, was $10 million, because that had a zero impact on anything based upon what was coming off, what we were saving and whatnot. That's where the 10 million came from. I've done RFQs with Parks and Rec commissions, which are basically school district boundaries, which are rec commissions. And they go out with RFQs on some of them in the smaller communities in particular, where they don't have a dollar amount, Aaron. They just say, we would like to have this project built. We want to do a design build. What can you do for us? And then they get back the pieces, and then they pick and choose and back into it that way. That's another option. I'm just saying that's how it's done in a lot of this rural communities that have park and rec commissions, because they don't know. They don't have staff and whatnot. They send it out to qualified contractors, and they get back a array of where they just pick and choose.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
Yes. Betty, if we were to borrow, again, we have up to 10 million, but if we were to borrow $6 million, we would be able to pay the principal and interest. And then next year, we would also be able to borrow we would go out again with Bob for a bonding amount for another amount, again, matching our principal and interest. Would that be your understanding as well? So if we were to borrow $6 million this year,
Right.
and then look at borrowing maybe $6 million next year for another defined project,
We'd have to do a whole nother issue.
but we would be
Right,
able
I mean,
to.
because this would be for the one issue, it
Right.
would be up to 10 million. So if we did 6 million, yes, then we'd have to go, then you'd authorize us to issue a 6 million next year.
So making sure that I understand what Bob and you and Jim have presented to us. At some point in the near future, we will have to have a specific action before the commission that says we intend to borrow this amount for Deer Creek, and then listing out the specific projects.
Yeah.
And that would go then for the people that are going to buy the bonds.
To comply with the SEC regs and the tax regs, you're going to have to give us a scope and description of a project with an estimated amount of cost, of which how much we're going to borrow money. I'll prepare a resolution which will authorize those projects to be completed and financed however the sources and uses turn out to be. In that resolution, the county and the PBC will retain an underwriter who will work with in order to allow me to prepare the offering document, get the offering document to the underwriter, who in turn will get it to the investors, who in turn they'll start to negotiate with to purchase the bonds. Once the bonds are sold, Betty executes the bond purchase agreement. I come back with another resolution for the PBC in this case, which would authorize the issuance delivery of the bonds to whoever the successful purchasers are. And so you're going to see us a couple more times, but one of them is we need a project description with sources and uses. And we need that to put it into an offering document so the investors know what the heck we're building and financing.
Yes.
Good, thanks. Well, so you mentioned earlier that there's no expiration date of the bonding authority, right? So the authority's been granted, but it doesn't mean that we have to issue the bonds right away.
No, you don't.
So could we, in theory, pay with temp notes for an amount of time until we feel like we've reached the point where we need to bond it?
You mean like to permanently finance it?
Yeah.
If you want to do an interim financing, yeah, we could do that. I mean, since we've got a Public Building Commission revenue bond here, Aaron, basically it won't be a note, it'll be a bond. I mean, they're all four letters.
Okay, okay.
You know, and those can be placed privately in some manner or another, maybe with some local banks, if the rates are good. If the rates aren't good, then, you know, I mean, that's why we have an underwriter. They're the ones that sell bonds every day, tell us what the rates are. Just like Betty alluded to earlier, you know, part of the guessing game, and it is a guessing game, is where are rates going to go? And you don't want to be behind the curve where you're issuing, you know, several $1 million worth of debt that's got 15, 20-year life on it with a higher rates at the end on which you're paying interest until that principal is retired for 10, 15 years. And that's the guessing game, where you just have to hope you're making the best decision at the time to get into the market to permanently finance it, so you're getting the lowest interest cost available on that day at that time, because it changes every day, every time.
The rates are very low, though, at this point.
They're about as low as we've seen in the last 12, 13 years, Bill.
Chances of them going much lower,
Well, you can't get below zero.
that's right,
You know?
like a CD. No, we don't have to spend it all. I mean, we don't have to borrow $10 million, unless, of course, Commissioner Cook's wife's involved, and.
Well, no, we're very frugal.
Okay,
Well,
we're very frugal.
Bill, so that there's,
What I heard about the furniture.
Bill, so that there's clarity here, though, I want to make sure you guys are clear. You have up to $10 million for Parks and Rec improvements. If you only do 6 right now, you only have 4 left, unless there's something else comes up, and you have other projects that aren't Parks and Rec, and then depending upon the timing, depending upon the nature of what those needs are, we're going to have to make a decision then as to what type of vehicle you're going to use to finance it, because you can't take $4 million for Parks and Rec and go put it in the jail. You don't have that authority.
Understood.
Oh, at this time, we need to stand up for, how many minutes? Couple minutes? And, what do they call this?
Active meeting.
Active meeting.
Hey, we had a pickleball court here, we can take care
That's right.
of it, no problem.
Got enough room.
I think we can put a cord in here if you need.
Mr. Chairman, Aaron, are there other questions you had indicated your concern was with the RFQ in its present form. If we issue the RFQ in its present form, the people that are going to be bidding on it would have concerns about whether or not that is really what we're wanting to do. What are your concerns?
Yeah, at this time, the RFQ is my primary concern, is the amount of debt, and I realize it would be essentially the same debt service we have now in terms of the amount of dollars going out. And I realize that, you know, we're being told that we would not have to raise taxes. But, you know, when you talk about recruiting businesses to Shawnee County, our taxes are pretty high right now. I mean, at some point, I'd like to lower them. And, you know, I guess as debt rolls off, that's great. We can get our financial house in order. But I do feel like this RFQ is something that needs to be addressed, because if we issue it in its current form, which we've not done yet, I mean, I think that right away we're going to have that debt service.
And maybe, Jim, have we issued the RFQ, or?
The RFQ has been drafted, but you indicated fairly quickly after it was adopted that you would like to have this discussion. So it has not been issued, pending what the final say will be from the Board of County Commissioners.
So we have the opportunity today to say we would like to amend the RFQ for this, to this amount or to this scope.
You have the opportunity to rescind it in its current form and reissue it in a different form.
Right. And so that would be the proper action, is rescind and an issue.
Yes.
Point of order, in your reading of Robert's Rules of Order earlier, I thought there was also the option to amend.
It's basically the same terminology.
Right. It just could not be a motion to reconsider. Reconsider
Correct.
has to be done during that meeting.
Correct. And you cannot rescind something that's already been done, but we haven't done it yet.
So if we were getting to a point to where, if you said I wanted to make a motion to rescind the prior action of the request for qualifications, or
The example they give you in Robert's Rules, if you're a church and you make a motion to paint the church and you've already painted the church, you can't rescind that. You can change the color, but you can't rescind that prior action.
yeah. So,
I'm not ready to make a motion just yet on anything. I think I'd kind of like to talk to somebody from Parks and Rec. If, Tim, would you be willing to?
Can we sit down now?
all right.
Linda, are we allowed? All right. Just want to make sure.
Tim Laurent, Shawnee County Parks and Recreation.
So, Tim, I guess, you know, I'm still behind the learning curve. I wasn't here for any of the plans before, although I read the newspaper and watch the news on TV, and I know kind of where things are at in the public eye. But I guess I'd kind of like to find out, I mean, is $8 million the number that you need, or can we do a good park for less?
Well, that's a tough question, because we don't really know what the expectations are. I think the short answer is yes. I mean, I think we could do some major improvements to Family Park for less than $8 million. But again, I think that what I've heard earlier in this meeting is that to be prudent, that we would want to do some public engagement and find out exactly what people want to see in that park. And that would be my recommendation, is that we try to do that, get public engagement, we master plan that park, and we come up with a thoughtful plan for what is best for the folks that live in that area and Topeka as a whole.
Is it possible to do that before issuing the RFQ?
I would assume so, but that's a tough question for me to answer.
I love the part that you said we need to master plan, because whatever we do, we need a plan for the whole park.
Yeah.
I do not want to get into a situation where we start piecemealing stuff in there. If the scope has changed of the project, so be it, but the master plan, that's where I'm going to stand firm. We need a plan for what we're doing and which direction we're going. And then see what we can afford. I don't know.
I would agree with that, because right now, it seems like there isn't a plan. We know that we have a demand for pickleball. We need that. And I think that and the Deer Creek Trail are the immediate needs, because it's clear that Hughes Park it's too busy. They can't use it at night. The people that live in that neighborhood don't like all the cars parked on the street all the time. I mean, I feel like those are things that need to get done. And I understand where you're saying we don't need to piecemeal this. A master plan is important. We need to be strategic with what we caught in the middle on this, is that, you know, some things need to happen relatively quickly, and other things I feel like we need to think about more. And I mean, I guess I kind of want to know, you know, if we did less than this, are there other capital improvements within Parks and Rec that you could find a use for a couple of million and make a significant impact in another park as well? I mean, I realize that for a politician to advocate against a large investment in my district, that it's probably not the greatest move for me personally, but there are other parks in my district as well. You know, Skyline Park we talk about trails. Those are some of the best trails in the region. And there need to be improvements on Skyline Park as well. Horn Park is in my district. It needs some improvements. Major Palm Park is in my district. It needs improvements as well. And I would say it probably needs them very badly. We've got a lot of needs. And this is one park. So, I mean, please.
If I can interrupt, I agree with you. There's been discussion from the beginning about deferred maintenance versus a term that I think Commissioner Rippon coined in deferred development. I think both of those things are real. We obviously have needs we have deferred maintenance needs. And I understand that we can't go replace as we mentioned earlier, paint a drinking fountain with this bond money. But we can make some pretty major improvements, excuse me, across our system. The pool at North was mentioned. That's upwards of probably, depending on what we end up with, the last quotes we got back were around $600,000. That certainly, in my mind, would be something that could be bonded. I don't, in my professional opinion, I would like to see some improvements at Family Park. I don't think there are a lot of things on the west side of Topeka. I think we could make some improvements without spending $10 or even $8 million that could address some of that. I would like to briefly mention the clubhouse at Cypress Ridge. It will either need to be replaced as part of this or have some sort of significant renovation, because it is literally falling apart. So that is something that I would advocate for. But yes, to answer your question, there are capital improvement projects across the Parks and Recreation system that could be addressed with this bond money.
Mr. Mays, one benefit of the commission is we've never really taken a parochial look as a commission. We've always had, I say that now realizing that, you know, Commissioner Rippon, you've been here for less than a year and you've been here for 2 weeks, but in the past, my whopping 7 years of, you know, what the commission has really impressed upon me is we take a very county-wide approach. When we looked at the Willard Bridge really was far removed from my, you know, constituents that live out in Tecumseh, but they saw it to be a county need. Looking at Midwest Health, again, that's something that affected the entire county. So we've always taken a more county-wide view as opposed to a parochial view. And so I appreciate that we continue in that vein.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I'm not specifically saying that I want all this $10 million spent in my district. Those were things that came to my mind as I was speaking of things, parks that I can think of, that need significant improvements, and not deferred maintenance, but deferred development, as you said. The golf course clubhouse, hasn't been a part of this discussion until just now, from what I've seen. Nobody's mentioned it to me at all. Is it possible to build a clubhouse that could host a pickleball tournament and a golf tournament simultaneously? I mean, is that,
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
and, how much does something like that cost? I don't know.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Tim, USD 437 is looking to build their new high school in that general location as well. Have we talked about any conjunctions with 437 for what they're going to be looking at for sports amenities, to where we would be able to work with 437 as far as a recreational facility, clubhouse, or other sports events?
Not to my knowledge. We have not had any discussions.
Yeah, there's always possibilities of partnerships, and there's possibilities of private money, like our Midwest Aquatic Center, Skyline Park. We've had partnerships where people have brought in private money for naming rights and things like that, and I think this park has huge potential for that. And so, that's another source, but partnering with a school, I would be open to something like that.
And again, 437, again, there's a high school that's projected to be in very close proximity to this park in the future, and so
Yeah.
I think it's also important to think about access to this park. Presumably, a lot of the users of this park are going to be coming from the areas surrounding this. Neither Urish Road nor Indian Hills have sidewalks. I think about, people in the area coming to the park. Those are significant infrastructure improvements that we're going to need to improve at some point too. And I know Urish is on the city CIP.
I could see some trails maybe within Family Park, and if we would put a trail to the west, we would link up with a large subdivision. As Urish, as you mentioned, as it's improved, we could allow extra right-of-way for a bike lane on the west side and link up to large subdivisions over there, just south of the golf course. So potential is tremendous as far as linking people to this park. And I think this park, too, would be a good catalyst for the city to make improvements of Urish. It needs improvements, and as we all know.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Tim, as far as the commission relating to Parks and Rec, when the RFQ was proposed, is it your position from the Parks and Rec that you really need more direction from the commission as to the amount of money that we're looking for the project, the scope of the project, what it is the commission is anticipating as far as a master plan? What is Parks and Rec needing from the commission to move forward?
Well, yeah, I'll be honest that we have taken a sort of wait-and-see approach on this entire project because we're looking for that. We don't want to move forward until we feel that a decision has been made here and that we're all comfortable with the direction that we're going. So I'd say that was accurate.
Commissioner Mays, that helps or muddies the water for you?
The water's very muddy at this point for me.
I could spend all 10 million if you want me to. You may not like it.
Commissioner Cook's wife.
So,
You're going to meet in the doghouse,
I
so
know,
Bill.
you mentioned it first.
a comment was made earlier by Bob, I believe, that, we could, for the RFQ, just remove the $8 million line and not put a number on there for the RFQ. Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
To remove the $8 million total?
And not have a defined number on there necessarily.
Honestly, in my mind, it is, we're going to come back to this board and get approval on every step of the project. So I'm not sure if all of the money has been bonded or has been earmarked for Parks and Recreation. I'm not sure that that dollar amount is that important, as long as we're continually getting feedback from this body on how that money is spent. Does that make sense? Is that what you're asking, I guess?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is with this RFQ in its current form, it specifically says up to $8 million.
Right.
And I have a fear that if we issue this out to the general public, if we took that number out, there's the possibility that we could come back and have 3 great plans, one for $4 million, one for $7 million, one for $5 million, and we can decide what's the best use of our funds at that time. And hopefully get everything that we want and need for that area. But, you know, and then that would perhaps free up some additional funding to be used in other areas.
I guess our other option would be to do a design bid form. Be another avenue. Then whoever's doing designing wouldn't have to be, they wouldn't be linked to building it, so at least we could have I don't know.
When we, Mr. Chairman, when we did Midwest Health, there was a lot of public input into that facility. That was a design build as opposed to a bid build, and that allowed Parks and Recreation to hold a number of open town hall meetings, public input, and that might be an answer to Commissioner Mays, what you're looking for, and you as well, Commissioner Rippon, for a master plan where the public has input. Under the bid build, a contractor is going to come back and they're not going to be necessarily holding or be obligated to hold open meetings and town hall meetings. But under a design build, the Parks and Rec Department will be holding those meetings and then saying, these are the specific items that we've heard from.
I would interject that in either way we go, it would either be us holding those meetings or that contractor holding those meetings. But those meetings would take place.
Excuse me, if I could inject something here, you've talked a lot about a master plan. As part of the 2019 capital outlays, you did approve $75,000 for a family park master plan. Now, I don't know what stage that is at, but those funds have already been allocated for a master plan.
Good to know.
Yeah. When were those allocated?
2019.
As part of for the 2019 capital outlay.
Okay.
So they,
That's right.
and I believe some of that has been spent, but,
A very small portion
Small
of that has
portion.
been sent to do those conceptual drawings.
When, if I may,
Sure.
when would we expect that master plan to be complete?
Well, we haven't started, so there'll be some, like I said, we've been taking a sort of wait and see approach, but I think that would be a process. I mean, I think you'd be looking at some time. I hate to guess, but I think you're looking at, that's a 2, 3, 4 month process, at least, in my mind,
Okay.
just on the spot here.
So perhaps maybe before we issue out the RFQ, we should be engaged in the master plan a little bit more.
I would agree.
And then we would be able to still expend the funds on Deer Creek Trail and seek reimbursement under our bond as bond counsel has advised. And Betty, would we be able to do that without any issues or concerns?
well, the $75,000 has already been allocated, so.
For the Deer Creek, if we were to.
Oh, for the Deer Creek. Yes, or we can also, if we needed to, we could do a temp note on that Deer Creek Trail. If it was, we do have somewhat of a time frame for reimbursing ourselves. So if it went beyond that, we could look at that. And I believe that time frame for reimbursement is 60 days, is that correct?
60 days prior to the adoption of the resolution in August.
Oh, okay. So we could, okay. So never mind about the 60 days.
I like the
So yes,
idea.
we could reimburse ourselves.
I like the idea of proceeding with a master plan, and as part of that master plan, we could get some more firm numbers on what things would cost, our pickleball, or if we're gonna do a little rec center, if we're gonna have basketball, whatever it's gonna look like, big play structure. And then we could do our RFQ, and we would have more defined
So,
scope of what we're gonna do.
so then, again, just if I'm filling in the blanks and making sure, we have approved a RFQ, but we've not issued it yet. Would it be then the majority or the intent of the body to hold off on the issuance of the RFQ until we have developed this master plan a little bit more, add meat to the bone, so to speak?
That's what I'm thinking.
That's what I think too. I want to be as thoughtful as possible about this. And as it's been pointed out several times, I've only been on this job 2 weeks. I feel like it's something that I don't want to slow walk it any more than we have to. But at the same time, I know that if there's a master plan coming, I'd love to see it before we issue an $8 million RFQ.
Well, I absolutely agree with that approach. I think slow this down, do the master plan. You mentioned the term thoughtful. I think that's the perfect word. We want to take a measured approach and make sure that we're getting what we really need for that area. And for the record, I've only been here 4 months, so, you know.
Doing a
we're
great
all-
job, though.
Yeah, thank you.
The newbie. I just like the idea of having a master plan and having some numbers with that
Me too.
master plan, and then we can phase this park in.
And, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Commissioner Mays, I would be remiss if I did not recognize Jim Martin in the audience. Jim has advocated and just donated a lot of his personal time and expertise in retirement. I think that he needs to redefine the word retirement, but he did a lot of groundwork in looking at our deferred maintenance, deferred development, and he has those all drawn up, and it was upwards of $15 million in looking at just deferred maintenance that Shawnee County has within Parks and Recreation.
Thank you.
Jim is flunking retirement.
But we're very appreciative of it.
We are. We're very appreciative.
Then, Jim, do you need a formal motion from the body then to defer the issuance of the RFQ?
Jim Crowell again, Shawnee County Counselor. I think that would be preferred to, instead of having an action that's sitting out there and nothing happening, I'd like to see a motion, a positive motion, giving direction to staff on what to do at this point with this project.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to defer issuance of the RFQ for a design build for a period not to exceed 90 days. That would give the Parks and Rec staff time to work on the master plan, recognizing they will probably not be complete with the master plan, but they will be at a spot where there will be some more development on it, and then we can see when we would want to issue the RFQ. But it would be a motion to defer the issuance of the RFQ for a period of not to exceed 90 days.
I'll second that. Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries 3-0.
Mr. Chairman, I know that there's a number of public here. If there's anybody that wants to have input, or I would ask that the chair consider allowing, knowing that we've already taken an action, but if they want to have input.
We can take this opportunity now. I'd like those who want to speak, who are opposed to this project, speak first. And if they would like to speak at this time.
Bill, let me interrupt. Can I go?
Sure.
Point of clarification, are you talking about opposed to what you just did or opposed to?
Opposed to the entire project, I guess.
I'm not opposed to the entire project, I'm opposed to something.
Come forward, Joe. Let us know what you're opposed to.
All right.
Joseph Ledbetter, and these comments are mine alone. I have been a member of the Parks and Rec Advisory for over 3 years. And as Mr. Mays knows, I attend city council meetings. I like to know about budgets, and most of all, I like to know about transparency and how plans are going to work, because a lot of times the plans are not what is implied or what is said. So I want to speed this up for the sake of time. I thank you for what you just did. I think that's wise. I do believe that we have not had enough input from the public, and one of my concerns is we didn't even have input from the advisory council. And that's in the contract, that you should have brought at least some of these ideas to us first. However, that was not done. Hopefully, we would be part of that master plan input. One of the things about the original master plan is when I go back and look at this park, all they talk about is there's a radio-controlled runway. It didn't talk about what to do in those specific areas of that park. However, I will tell you that it talked about a lot of other parks with Southwest addresses. Country Club, Gwendolyn Brooks, Seabrook, all Southwest addresses that the reports, when you looked at the individual parks, said they need upgraded playground equipment, that playground equipment was missing. There were things missing from these neighborhood parks. So what the advisory council passed earlier this year in February in addressing deferred maintenance, which is of record, and that's been stated, 14 million to 15 million constantly at public meetings of deferred maintenance or deferred enhancements. What we did, we passed a $5 million request for the CIP because there had not been CIP bonded money spent in the original city Parks and Rec other than the Aquatic Center, and $100,000 for a sound wall at Ward Mead in the 7 years that the county has had the Parks and Rec system entirely. So we saw a need to get some of that bond money spread out throughout the city. I also want to go on record, and I've done this before, I absolutely support the Deer Creek Trail, and the only number I ever heard that we needed was $700,000 more. If that's higher, so be it. It needs to be done. I've also gone on record and said I support a pickleball court complex at that center. However, I defined it. I said just an outdoor pickleball complex and maybe some restrooms. We already have parking that can be used. I looked at numbers, and I talked to some of the pickleball people. I don't know if they're in the room, the ones I talked to, but I was looking at $500,000 with a restroom and the outdoor pickleball facility as being adequate. So the people not in the room today were the 4,000 people that signed the petitions, except some of us did sign that petition. There were a number of advisory council people I actually saw sign that petition to put the 10 million up to a vote. There's about 22,000 kids, some of them are in school today, that use our playgrounds, and they need playground equipment for exercise. We've got over 3,000 ball players. Actually, it's more like 5,000. We've got over 3,000 soccer ball players that use all of our facilities or parts of our facilities. So the only concern I've got about the master plan for that area is that I think it's time that each of these 3 districts had a input public meeting from people in each of your respective districts telling you what people want about Parks and Rec. Because what we hear at the advisory, and me and others, is that people want the neighborhood parks upgraded. They're okay with pickleball, but they want this money shared. They want Ward Mead finished, they want more improvements in Gage, and they want the shelter houses improved and upgraded. And so, real quick, what I heard from bond counsel was we don't even have a bare bones description. That's what I've been saying all along. You don't have an adequate description of what you're wanting to go to bonds. So you've taken care of that today, at least in part. 7 years will buy you HVA equipment. It will buy you playground equipment. We've got a playground over in Betty Phillips Park that's been there for 15 years, and it looks like new. That's how well the kids have taken care of it. And I know Parks and Rec has power washed and done some things, but playground equipment will last a long time if it's just taken care of. So these things are good to bond with. One of the concerns that was brought up today was this golf course clubhouse, and that was only brought up to the advisory after the fact. I heard that, wow, we're looking at 1.3 million just to rebuild that clubhouse, and I said, we don't have the money to take care of what we've got. So when I hear these requests, I would urge you very much as commissioners to balance the request and understand that these requests are countywide. They're not just in one small quadrant park, which is a few acres out of 2,000. So it is a small percentage. I want it to be enhanced personally, but I want the rest of the park system taken care of as well. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Carol Marple. I always hate to follow Joe because, he just does real well. And I had written a script, but I'm going to deviate from it entirely. I want to talk a minute about the petition. We had over 4,000 people that signed this. We had over 100 people that gathered signatures. If we talk about the 450 signatures that we had to destroy after the county councilor gave us a ruling, we had close to 5,000 signatures. We did not meet our goal. But the one most important thing that everybody said when they signed that petition was, if we are going to borrow $10 million to build a family park, and that is the way it was presented early on, we want the right to vote on it. We want our voices heard. Now, I want to go back, which Commissioner Mays, you were not on the commission. In August, when the CIP came to light or was brought forward about this family park, it was one page. I think that you need to go back to your own CIP and the requirements. The CIP did not meet any of the requirements set forth by the commissioners. There is no plan, and we've glossed over it, about how are we going to maintain and do the upkeep of this park if it is built. All of a sudden, and I live in southwest Shawnee County, I'm almost on the county line, but I'm just amazed how suddenly we've become a desert. We have no parks out there. But that was not true when Camp Daisy came up for sale. We couldn't get anybody that had the power to listen to us. Camp Daisy sold for $650,000. That's a far cry from the family park expense that we're talking about. Pickleball courts could have been out there, built out there. People out in the county could have used them. The pickleball players have done an absolutely great job of lobbying for what they want. But I think we also need, and Joe talked about it, let's think about our kids that live in the city and the county. They have so many needs. The adults, we can drive places. I agree. I knew nothing about pickleball. I'm not even sure I'd heard of it until all this started. I was amazed to find out there are places to play besides the county. You can go to the Y, you can go to the health clubs. And that brings up another thing. I do not believe that it is the county's desire to become in direct competition with businesses that we have in our county that pay taxes to us. That's not something we want to do. People were very angry because this whole situation was so fluid. The only thing that was consistent with this proposed family park was that there would be 20 lighted pickleball courts with restrooms and locker rooms. That's the only thing. Deer Creek Trail was added later on. You know, there was no plan, and that is what you have all referred to, some of you. And, you know, we have so many dollars that are being deferred in maintenance with the Parks and Rec system to spend, and I agree with Commissioner Cook, to spend the $10 million all in one spot, which I was glad that Bob Perry answered that question. It can be spread out to other Parks and Rec places. But, you know, well, I've lost my train of thought. We just have got, when we borrow this money, we are saying that we will make a payment every year, which I think if Betty Griner will probably correct me if I'm wrong, will be $850,000 approximately. That money has got to come from somewhere. Is it going to be added to the Parks and Rec budget? You know, we are limiting what we can do with this money. What if there comes something within the county, not in the Parks and Rec, that the county needs? I want to make a couple of comments about the article that I did read in the paper on Sunday. I don't think that any person thought that $10 million was going to be spent on only pickleball courts. And I want to say that the city of Topeka is not the only place that has poor roads. Come out into the county proper. There's a lot of people that'll talk to you about their roads. You know, the county talks a good game about using local businesses, but that's something we need to discuss later on. We talk about, and I'm very familiar with people that work in our county but live outside the county. And this $10 million park, if it is built, is not going to entice people to come to our county. Commissioner Mays hit upon it. Our taxes are so high. We are 8th in the state of Kansas with our taxes. We do not have affordable housing in our county. You know, our crime rate, those are 3 very important issues that people look at when they decide they want to live in our city or our county, which is also the same. You know, a $10 million park, it's not going to enter into it. Now, what might enter into it, if they want to buy a house over on the east side of town, if there is a park that is accessible to their child that they can go and play on, that will enter into it. But, you know, we need parks and rec and good facilities for everybody in this county. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Mike Coates, and I may be speaking ahead of some of them that are opposed to it, but I wanted to address a couple of things that she said, because, you know, you mentioned about how competing against the health clubs and stuff. Most of the health clubs actually don't allow the pickleball players in the summertime because they want to have the kids there for the basketball and a lot of that. There's very, very limited numbers of times. Sorry, I'm not speaking at the microphone. Very limited numbers of times when we can play at those facilities. You know, an hour here, a couple hours there. But also the part about competing, it's the outdoor pickleball that grows the sport to the point that they get their customers. The best thing that happens to them is the outdoor pickleball. That increases their business for pickleball players so much. Genesis Wood Valley, in the wintertime, often has 50 players on their one time a week they allow us to play there from 3 to 6 on Sundays. They wouldn't have anywhere near that if there wasn't for the pickle. We probably wouldn't even have 50 pickleball players in the whole city if it wasn't for that. So that helps it. But the only other thing I wanted to say was I appreciate all 3 of you've commented and recognized the need for pickleball, and have expressed either support or at least not against pickleball. I want to thank you for that. And I think pickleball is a wonderful addition to the palette of Parks and Rec offerings in Shawnee County and across the state. Because no other sport that I know of gets people off of the couch that have been sedentary for years, I'm sure I mispronounced that word, and got them back out and actively exercising and doing it on a regular basis. I don't think any other sport or activity comes close to doing it as pickleball has. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Dick Ketterman, and I live over in the Oakland area, which is First District 2. And I'm here to speak as a constituent, which I know many of the people that I talked to after this happened and the vote was taken were upset that it was just kind of dropped on everybody all at once. I'm also a member of the Shawnee County Parks and Rec Advisory Board. And I think we were a little upset that we didn't get to see anything about this before that vote came up. It just happened. So I'm super glad to find out tonight that today that you've chosen to do what you do or have done. I think that we've got some good ideas. The pickleball courts are definitely, well, maybe I better hold off on saying this, but the majority of our committee are for the idea of the pickleball courts. We've got the matching money on the trail, so that's a big positive there. Now the rest of the park, I know what that clubhouse looks like out there right now for the golf course, and it is in very bad shape. I don't know if people understand that this building they're talking about, building, they're calling it a rec center, would also be used as that clubhouse too for the golf course. The golf course brings in tournaments, brings in money. And another thing, I think I heard Joe and Harold both speak about some more needs of parks out in that area, but there's going to be a definite traffic problem for the kids to get to this park. Urish Road and the East-West Road are not good for them to be able to be walking to get to this park. So those are some other things that are going to have to be considered. But I do like the idea that maybe this will come before the advisory committee now when it gets from the Parks and Rec Department on what they want to try to see, and we could lend some advice maybe into the order of what we think should be done and done in what place. So that's my ideas today, and I hope you'll thank you for your service.
Thank you, Dick.
Now, anyone else opposed? In the interest of time, when people, I suppose the majority of you are from pickleball, if you don't have if you don't have comments that differ from somebody, or if they do differ from somebody, please come up. But if we're just repeating the same thing, let's try to hold back on that. But go ahead.
I'm Susan Winter, and I've lived in Topeka, West Topeka for almost 66 of my 68 years. This isn't about pickleball. I do play pickleball, but this park is not just about pickleball. It's about doing the right thing for Topeka and putting a park where we need it. An independent study said that this is where we did need a park. Let's do it right. Let's spend the money we need to make it a place that we can all be proud of. The best way to keep people in Topeka is exactly what you're proposing to do, is a family park like this. I wouldn't worry too much about access. I've taken my grandkids out to the North Park, the swing park, and that is not easy to get to either. Lake Shawnee, you can't really walk to Lake Shawnee, but I've taken my grandkids out there too. $23 million has been put into Lake Shawnee in maybe the last 10 years. They're just proposed a $250,000 island for the Adventure Cove, $130,000 to control the weeds in the park, $600,000 for a new kiddie pool at the North Park. I think all of this is great. Anything you can do to enhance all of the parks in Topeka is perfect. But we need to retain employees. If you want to get the tax base lowered in Topeka, the best way to do it is to keep people in Topeka. Bill Rapon said that 40% of people earning $40,000 or more live outside of Topeka. A lot of companies suggest to their employees, live in Lawrence. Do not live in Topeka. There's nothing to do. That is not correct, but we do need to enhance a lot of our facilities. So continued loss of residents needs to be reduced. The best way to do that is exactly what we're doing. There was a quote from a candidate running for Topeka City Commission that was in the paper this weekend when it had the candidate responses on what they wanted to see in Topeka, and I wanted to read it. It says, outward migration. It's imperative we stop people from leaving Topeka and attract new citizens. Master plans, short and long-term planning must be done from the perspective of what keeps people here and attracts new residents. Otherwise, we will continue to have an eroding tax base. The most effective way to do this are improvements in quality of life and job development. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, well, I'd like to thank you for being here today and sharing your comment. What?
Sorry, we do have something that's not on pickleball, if you were gonna open it up to other comments on the agenda.
I think that'll be later.
That'll be at
That'll be
under-
at the end of our meeting. Okay. That was a long one. Thanks for your patience. All right, next on the agenda.
Item 3, consent agenda.
I'm going to move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Been moved by Commissioner Rippon, seconded by Commissioner Mays. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries 3-0. Next item.
Item 4, new business. A, County Clerk, number 1, consider all voucher payments.
Mr. Chairman, we have vouchers this morning that total $2,711,743.26. The highlights out of the budget, the largest item is our payroll pool cash of $649,456.24. This is 2 voucher reports since we did not have a meeting, and so we have that higher amount. Allocations of $110,198.71. Under building maintenance, Sunflower Paving, which was concrete work at 3 parks, and that was $98,947.46, of which $82,000 was just for concrete work at 3 parks. Under the bridge, Finney and Turnip Seed was this construction inspection over the southeast 29th at Deer Creek. The court spent $105,078.05. Under Department of Corrections, we have $312,846.05, of which Horizon Health, the health for our inmates, is at the highest amount. Under Equipment, $65,721.94, which was our rural data products, which is network switching, and also Sunflower Paving for concrete work at Willow Park. Holding accounts with the state of Kansas of $617,415.56, and health insurance premiums of $162,741.98. My questions have all been answered, and I would move for approval.
I'll second that. Motion's been made by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries 3-0. Next item.
Number 2, consider correction orders.
I move that we approve the correction orders.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Rippon, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries 3-0. Next item.
Item B, Public Works, number 1, public hearing on the replacement rehabilitation projects for the Sherwood Regional Wastewater System.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Nias, Director of Public Works. To start, pardon me. Okay, just to give you a little history for the benefit of Aaron, on August 5th, 2019, the commission approved a resolution that allowed Public Works in the county to secure a KDHE loan for the purpose of some construction projects out at the Sherwood treatment facility and the collection system. Public hearing was scheduled on a commission meeting on September 16th, and that's why we're here this morning to conduct the public hearing. The public hearing is a requirement, a KDHE requirement of securing the loan. I guess before we give anyone a chance to comment from the public, I'll just briefly go over the projects. The projects are numerous, but we can package those logically. The first project is the Teacup project, and it's basically approximately $500,000 to replace the Teacup at the Sherwood wastewater treatment plant. You'll hear more about that in the coming couple of weeks. And then we have a project to replace 4 what I call easy pump stations. They're easy to get to. They're going to be relatively simple to get to and to replace. And then we have 2 pump stations that I call the difficult pump stations. They're right here, and the reason they're so difficult and thus so expensive is because they're in people's backyards, they're close to the lake, and they're relatively deep, and they involve a line that goes under a finger to the lake. This line may be replaced or rehabilitated. And finally, a project to improve, rehabilitate, or replace the collection system in this area. So, we have these projects identified. The city of Topeka operates the system for us. They probably know more about the strengths and weaknesses of the system than anybody. They have helped us, Public Works, identify these critical projects. Another thing that helped us identify this project right here is in 2014, we cameraed videoed all of the oldest parts of the collection system, and this was an area that deserved attention due to condition and risk. If there's a failure in this area, the whole west part of the lake, the sewage goes to the treatment plant along this area here. So if we have a failure in this area, it will be catastrophic. Again, the projects will be paid for with a maximum $7 million KDHE loan. We will not take out the $7 million all at once. We'll take the money out as our design and construction costs require. The loan will be paid back via user fees, so it will be paid back 100% from people that get their sewer treatment collection from the Sherwood Regional Wastewater Treatment System, and there are no tax dollars involved in these projects. The work will take place over the next coming 3 to 4 years, and once this work is complete, that is not the end of it. We need to continue to be proactive in managing this infrastructure so that we avoid any issues in the future. This is just a public hearing as required by KDHE. At the end of the public hearing, it does not require any action by the commission. I just bring that up for your information. And with that, then anyone that can, from the public that wants to come forward.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. On advice of legal counsel, I would make a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll second that. Motion's been made by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. Open the meeting. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, motion carries 3-0. Mr. Martin, could I ask you a few questions?
Jim Martin. I've been assisting Public Works on these projects for some time.
I've known you, you've done a lot of work on this project, and you feel like this is the highest priority of this area? And
yeah, these particular projects, have been on the radar for about 3 years now. But they go clear back into the early 2000s when we took a look at the entire area. Some of these projects date back that far as needing replacement. The emphasis of the last 3 years has been the city has made great efforts to improve the operation out there, and which they've done under contract to the county. But these facilities have continued to age, and so with the city's help, we conducted a review of all the facilities in the county, but these in particular in the Sherwood district are the ones that are of imminent need. In fact, one of them that was on this list previously failed last fall and had to be replaced, and some of these are near that situation. So what we've done is take what we think is the most critical projects, done the math, the financial, worked with KDHE, and they've worked very well with us as far as setting up the loan and the conditions. So yes, these are absolutely critical for that system to function. They will be designed, and new materials, new technology will also be incorporated. So we're looking at replacement activities that will go probably 30 to 50 years or more for the future.
Do we do a design bid on projects like this, or how do we?
It's a mixture. Right now, when Kurt mentioned the teacup project, that is a particular unit at the treatment plant, and basically we've got that as a design build because it's more of a contractor project that needs a little bit of engineering. So that methodology allows for you to do that and do it fairly quickly. The remainder of these projects will be pretty much design bid because there's a lot of legwork that needs to be done with each one. But
okay. Well, thank you for all your work you've done on this and helped us out.
Yeah, I can answer any other particular questions if you'd like.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
Pardon me, since Jim talked about the teacup and the design build, we do have a public hearing on October 31st covering that alternate project delivery method, just a reminder.
Okay. We don't need any action on this item, so I guess we can move on to the.
No, motion to close public.
Okay. Motion to close public meeting.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Rippon, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Next item.
Number 2, consider approval of request to solicit bids for various road and culvert maintenance materials for 2020 in the winter of 2020-2021. A, glass spheres for traffic lane marking. B, lightweight aggregate material. C, culvert pipe guardrail. D, hot mix asphaltic concrete. E, asphalt oil products. F, crack sealing material. G, clean crushed limestone. H, de-icing salt. I, sand. J, calcium chloride. And consider approval of request to waive bidding procedures and purchase various road and culvert maintenance materials for 2020 and the winter of 2020-2021. K, emulsified asphalt for tack oil, $50,000. L, crushed stone at quarry prices, various gradations, $50,000. M, sign sheeting materials, state contract, KTA prices, $25,000. N, sign blanks, phone bid, $20,000. O, signpost brackets, phone bid, $10,000. P, traffic line paint, white and yellow, Kansas Correctional Industries, $140,000. Funding will be from a combination of the following funds as required: the 2020 Public Works Road and Bridge Maintenance Funds, Special Bridge Fund, and the Monmouth and Grove Township Roadway Funds.
Kearney House, Director of Public Works. Last week you approved a bid for sand and calcium chloride. Oh,
excuse me, we
have to stand
for a bit.
let me restart. Last week, you approved bids for sand and calcium chloride. They will be used during this coming winter. Those were the last materials that need to be secured. So now the process starts all over again for 2020 and the winter of 2020, 2021. So before you again is a request to purchase using the normal bidding procedures or some variation thereof that deviates from that, these materials that are used to maintain our roads and bridges.
Any questions?
I move to approve as requested.
Second. Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Nath. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries 3-0. Next item.
Item C, planning, number 1, public hearing and consider approval of resolution number 2019-78, declaring Northwest Hodges Road south of Northwest 13th Street as a minimum maintenance road.
Good morning, Commissioners. Randy Anderson, Planning Department. The property, the road section in question is Hodges Road, south of 13th Street, down to the Kansas River. I did have some overhead items I was going to present showing the road. They're not up there right now. But I would say that Hodges Road, basically, if you look at the 1,800-foot long section, is more like a trail that farmers would use to get their farm equipment into a field to be able to pick the corn or whatever they happen to be growing that year. The road right now has very limited access, being used by there's a river adventure use at the very end of the road section for seasonal excursions on the Kansas River. And other than that, it might be just used periodically by farm equipment, farmers getting into their fields to take care of the crops that are adjoining the property. We did send out notice to all adjoining property owners, which there's just two persons who adjoin it. It was advertised for this public hearing that you will conduct before you take consideration on the action. We haven't had any kind of feedback or comments from anybody who's concerned about the project. The item was brought forward by Silver Lake Township. They have the authority over the road. They, of course, are supporting the action as they brought it forward. You have in your packet the list of the criteria that we have to follow as a county to be able to declare this road as a minimum maintenance road. We took the item before the Planning Commission, and they did look at those criteria and did, by a vote of 6-0, find that the road did meet the criteria of the state statute. It was minimal usage, only affected 2 property owners, and they felt it complied in all respects to the criteria and did make that recommendation. So we would recommend that you conduct the public hearing, open and close the public hearing, and then take action to find that the minimum maintenance road is warranted for this section of Northwest Hodges Road and to vote accordingly. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to open the public hearing.
I will second that. Motion's been made by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Okay, we are now open for public hearing.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Randy, this item came about after we had approved the action from the river, kayaking, canoeing, boating individuals, and the Silver Lake Township then discovered that they had the responsibility for the road. Prior to that, there was some belief that it wasn't even a road.
That's correct. At one point, about a year ago, it actually was gated and posted as private property. So after some research and discovery, we figured out who actually had authority over the road. It's not a county road, it's a township. So yeah, and this has been a year process, and going through the motion of the conditional use permit being granted and completing this final step of really putting a final determination on what we're going to classify this road as.
And so this really is defining for the township who's responsible and what their responsibility level is.
Right. And if you do take favorable action to recommend the approval of the request, there would actually be a sign posted that says essentially that you drive the road at your own risk, meaning that it's not developed to any public road standard. It is basically a farm access and a river access. So you probably need a sturdy vehicle to get down that road safely.
Are there any cattle or anything on the adjacent property owners?
No, in your packet, we show you some pictures. It looks like on both sides of the road, it's, at least last year, it was in corn production. I don't know if that's what they do every year, but I'm sure they have some kind of crop rotation, but it's mainly a farm road. Looks like it was a part of the Oregon Trail.
It's 2 ruts. We maintain right-of-way, though.
Right.
Okay.
Randy, did you have any input from the individuals operating the business at the end of this road as to what impact this action would have on their business?
I think a year ago, they were involved in the process of what we needed to do. We did notify them of the request, and we haven't had any feedback by phone or by mail or email or anything else. So we assume they're aware of it. And the road right now is not gated, just for the record.
Anyone else wish to speak on this item? I move that we close public hearing.
And would you add and to adopt the recommendation to a minimum?
Yes.
Okay, I will second.
Okay, motion's been made by Commissioner Rippon, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item D, Information Technology, number 1. Consider approval of request to publish a request for quotation for purchase of an additional Nutanix hyperconverged infrastructure computing platform.
It's easy for you to say.
Good morning, Commissioners. Pat Oblander, Information Technology Department. Back in December of last year, the Commission approved the purchase of a Nutanix hyperconverged infrastructure computing platform, which is a $10 word for a big computer that we run a lot of other servers on. It's a central computer that is essential to virtual computers that support a lot of different things throughout the county. The first one was purchased to support many of the systems throughout the county that do not involve public safety. We are now at the point where we're ready to move forward with the purchase of an additional Nutanix node to support the public safety computers that are currently running on hardware that is reaching end of service life. We're really happy with what we've seen with the Nutanix platform. It's done a really good job for us and has reduced costs significantly from what we've done in the past on these types of platforms. So we're looking to do an RFQ, or request for quotations, for an additional node or an additional cluster that would support the servers that support public safety, such as the New World's Records Management System for the Sheriff's Office and the jail, and also for the 911 Dispatch Center. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions? I move that we approve.
Second?
Motion's been made by Commissioner Rippon, seconded by Commissioner Mays. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Next item.
Number 2, consider authorization and execution of contract C-374, 2019, a sole source purchase from the Center for Internet Security for network security monitoring and reporting services for a Shawnee County internet connection at an annual cost of $14,700 with funding from the Information Technology 2019 budget.
Good morning, Commissioners. Pat Oblander again with the Information Technology Department. What we're asking for in this request is to complete an agreement with the Center for Internet Security to provide internet traffic monitoring for threats that may pop up as traffic enters and leaves the county. This service monitors that traffic and provides reports back to the Information Technology Department about any threats that may show up in those traffic streams. We currently use this service through the State of Kansas connection that has been in place for many years for the county and has provided a really good resource for monitoring traffic into and out of the county. We have instituted a new connection recently through Kansas Fiber Network, and we would like to utilize this same service for that new connection. And we're using we would like to use the same service so that we have consistency in the reports that we're getting back about traffic into and out of the county through both of those circuits. That's why we're asking for a sole source purchase for this very same service. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second. Motion's been made by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor? Say aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Next item.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Item E, Register of Deeds, number 1, consider approval of request to transfer $115,000 from the Register of Deeds Technology Fund to the Land Records Fund.
Good morning, Commissioners. Becky Neosi, Register of Deeds. The Register of Deeds office has a technology fund, and basically it's $2 per page of all the documents most of the documents that we bring into our office. That's to be used in my office for storing, recording, archiving, retrieving, maintaining, and handling data in the office. And we do have to keep most of our documents forever into infinity, so we do need that. But when there's excess money that's not needed at the end of the year, that can be transferred to be used for other offices. But it must be used for equipment and technology services related to land or property records. So I'm asking to transfer $115,000 today, and we do have a committee set up. It's the Land Records Committee that was set up in 2004, and the department heads from the IT department, appraiser's office, clerk's office, weed department, planning, and public works all make up that committee, as well as the Register of Deeds. And when requests are brought, we submit those, the ones we approve, to you for approval. But we do try to make sure those fit the statutory guidelines. So we started a new process in 2016 for those requests to come forward a year in advance. So the next time we'll come before you will be in March, and then we'll ask for approval for items that will be for 2021. And that way, departments will know what projects they can fund out of this budget, out of these monies, and they can ask for those when they do their yearly budget request. So I believe that's all I have on that. From time to time, we will have requests throughout the year come forward that weren't planned for, and we do have a little bit of money set aside for those extra things. So do you have any questions about the Technology Fund or the Land Records Committee? Or anything else?
I do not. I would move for approval of the transfer of the $115,000.
I will second that. Motion's been made by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much, and it sounds like we have some good teamwork working here.
We do, and I appreciate all the members of the committee that work on that.
Very good. Next item.
Item F, Parks and Recreation, number 1, consider authorization and execution of contract C-375, 2019 with Fidelity Information Services to be able to accept payments from the Kansas Department of Children and Families for participation in the Civitan Day Camp.
Good morning, Commissioners. Susan Fowler-Hensler, Parks and Recreation. The Civitan Camp takes place 8 weeks out at Gage Park and serves our adaptive recreation population. They are approved and have been since 2014 to use the Department of Kansas Department of Children and Family Services for payments. We do need this agreement with FIC in order to use those electronic payments from DCF. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner May, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries 3-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next item.
Item G, Counselor, number 1, consider approval of change order number 9 to contract C-434, 2018 with Kelly Construction Company, Inc. for the East Topeka Learning Center renovation and addition project to add lighting to shop and shop storage areas, add river rock at storm drain, change CCTV boxes at light poles, and delete painting of handrail, resulting in an increase in cost of $13,146.44 in the change order with funding from the project construction budget.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Crowell, Shawnee County Counselor. This is the final change order for the East Topeka Learning Center project to clean up the final loose ends. This project, unique project, the county has been administering this project on behalf of JADO. It's the first time we've done a project like this, maybe the last, we'll see. But it has been a successful project. It did reach substantial completion from a construction standpoint last summer. So the building is up and running and they're using it. This is a final bookkeeping item, final change order to get the final odds and ends into the contract and to close it out, hopefully. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are they through their punch list now? Is everything
That's what they've
finished?
been working on, and that's what some of these items will relate to, are final punch list items and small odds and ends. And it's a unique project with a budget that those of you who have sat on JADO will recall sort of cobbled together different types of funds and tax credits to put the project budget together. It's a project budget wherein if you save money, you can't use it on anything else. So we're spending down the project budget that was allocated through those tax credits to get the most that we can for the project.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Jim, for all of your hard work on this.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll echo that. Thanks for all your work, and I'll second the motion. Motion's been made by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item H, Commission number 1, consider approval of resolution number 2019-79, allocating the 2020 social services funds, service programs for the elderly funds, and the special alcohol drug program funds.
Good morning, Commissioners. Last on the list. Thanks for a long morning. You have this, I know. Been there, done that. You have this in your information. It was submitted way early, and I'm happy to provide more copies because it was part of the budget process, and there have been no changes, but if you'll allow me, Chairman.
Sure.
With some of the new folks, that way you can see how we have allocated the funds. And I use the term "we" globally because this is all done as a result of work by volunteer committee. And let me back up. Mary Thomas, Community Resources Council. So there are no changes to the spreadsheets that were submitted as part of our budget process back in July, because the commission at that time awarded all funds that were requested, and these were modest requests. We had less than 1% on one and just a little over 2% on the other. This is work that is done by 2 different volunteer committees of 5 individuals that I wrestle to come in and give me a day or two to work through the application process, to listen to presentations by all of those applicants, and then to do the hard work of determining how to award grant dollars for social services that go on here in our community. What you're looking at represents about 25 to 30 agencies with about 75 to 100 programs that reach thousands of your constituents every year. They appreciate all the work that you do in making sure that they have the money available to continue the work that they do for your constituents. You know, the county is generous in almost $1 million in social service granting for elderly programming and social service programming for family and children. I would stand for questions.
I know we talked about this during the budget, but just to go ahead and clarify, Breakthrough House has a reduction of $16,000, which was funded in 2019, a request for $20,000 for 2020, but the recommendation from the committee is 0. Again, the reason for that reduction to go from the requested $20,000 to 0.
You are correct in your statement, and they received, each one of those agencies that applied received a letter from me explaining either the award or no award. It was the thought of the committee in doing the review work that because Breakthrough House was part of the line item that is addressed through mental health, it mentions Vallejo, but not all of the other agencies that receive part of that mental health award, that they didn't feel that they needed to have a second hit at county money, that they should use what they get through the mental health line item, and that the social service line item would be open for other work to be done.
And Breakthrough House was notified by letter of this.
They were notified by letter, and I went into good detail and helped them understand. And I do have a member of that committee that's here if you wanted to ask them more specifically about that discussion. It was tough, but, you know, they're trying to stretch that dollar across the community as the best they can.
Right. I don't have any questions, but I wanted to make sure that we did highlight that, because that is one of the major changes.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the requested allocations as set forth.
I'll second. Motion's been made by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Mays. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed, motion carries 3-0. Next
Thank you,
item.
Commissioners. On behalf of all the lives that this money touches every year, it is crucial, and they appreciate your support.
Thank you for all you do.
Administrative communications.
We have one more
item
within this.
Sorry, I'm an attachment. I'm Max Wilson. I'm the grant review chair of the Topeka Shawnee County Alcohol and Drug Abuse Advisory Council, and I do have copies of this. I'm not sure you got them or not, but we're proposing funding 3 alcohol and drug grants. There were projected of $50,000 for 2020, and we're recommending $5,500 for PARS evaluation and intervention, also known as Youth Evaluation Program. And then the 3rd Judicial District's Drug Court recommending $17,000. And then Vallejo Recovery Center Social Detoxification Program for $27,500.
And again, these are funds that come from the alcohol tax. Or
Liquor by the drink tax.
I'll make a motion to approve the request.
I'll second. Motion's been made by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries 3-0.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next item.
Administrative communications.
Good morning, Commissioners. Angela Lewis with Human Resources. Late last week, the Kansas Leadership Center announced their 2020 Transformation Partners, and Shawnee County is one of them. We're one of 8 public sector partners selected to participate this year. Every year, KLC provides grants valued up to $150,000 each to civically engaged organizations across Kansas to participate in their leadership programs. So Shawnee County is honored to take part with KLC. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tim Laurent, Shawnee County Parks and Recreation. I just wanted to remind everyone that we're having our public engagement tomorrow night at Major Palm Park, as mentioned earlier. It's at 6:00 p.m. And for those of you that don't know, the address for Major Palm is 1815 Southwest 37th Street. So I know it's a little bit hard to see, but look forward to having a big turnout, and hope you all can make it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good morning. My name is Liz Gregg. I'm a member of Loman United Methodist Church and a member of Topeka Jump. I reside in Shawnee County up on Northwest Wilson Road, and I believe that's in Mr. Cook's district. And I wanted to let you know we do appreciate the hard work and the relationship we've built with you over the years. Commissioner Mays, you've had a chance to meet with Jim a few times as a council member. Welcome as a commissioner. Commissioner Rippon, We look forward to having meetings to get to know your vision better for the county and position on aspects of the community our membership cares about, like transportation, housing, and violence. I'm here this morning to draw your attention to the SOTO and Neto Ride to Work programs. All of you at this point have become somewhat familiar with SOTO and Neto. You will recall that we were instrumental in encouraging Topeka Metro and Go Topeka to collaborate on this workforce development plan to help common people living in Central and East Topeka be able to find and keep higher paying jobs at major employers like Frito-Lay, Target Distribution Center, Reese's, and Goodyear's. I have now some the ridership information. This is from August. These are the recent stats, if I may present these to you. Members of Topeka Jump and the community at large have been celebrating your vote on JETO to support these programs. We believe they are a clear demonstration of this common value that we and Jump share, called holistic economic development. We are here this morning because we understand the plan Go Topeka presented in 2017 only outlined funding for SOTO through the end of the year. Neto still has another year of funding under JETO, but SOTO does not. The pilot program is due to be evaluated, and Go Topeka and JETO are going to have to demonstrate and take the next steps. Pilot programs are created to test if the program will work. When pilot programs demonstrate success, the next step is for a governing body to make plans for continuation. In August alone, SOTO and Neto gave 1,461 rides. This is wildly successful. So naturally, the program should continue. The fate of this program is in your hands as voting members of JETO. So we are here to express our desire for SOTO to continue to run in 2020 with funding from JETO. If the staff of Go Topeka do not present a competent plan for the continuation of SOTO, they are not doing their job, and we want you to hold them accountable for that. They have already expressed to Jump that they do not intend to present a plan for SOTO. We employ you to direct your staff as voting members of JETO to put SOTO in their 2020 budget and to come up with a competent plan for continuation moving forward. Go Topeka is willing to pay for people to move here. We have to do something for workers that are already here. SOTO and Neto are the only Go Topeka initiatives for regular working class people, and we cannot afford to let it go. I repeat, we employ you to direct your staff as voting members of JETO to put SOTO in their 2020 budget and to come up with a competent plan for continuation moving forward of these programs. Send them an email, make a phone call, have a meeting. We're counting on you and every other voting member of JADO to do this before they present their budget to their board, which happens on November 1st and December 6th. Tony Emerson has already spearheaded conversations with Go Topeka about working SOTO into Go Topeka's 2020 budget. He agrees with Jim. Emerson needs his colleagues, you, to come alongside him to construct Go Topeka to fund SOTO. Go Topeka has to know we are serious about this program continuing because we're serious about getting people to work. I will field questions, and if I can't do it, I think I have some backup here.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mays, I'm not sure if you were a voting member when we adopted this initially or not, but this was an item that was adopted by JADO as part of our annual budget to initiate a pilot program as outlined for the South Topeka businesses, including Mars, Home Depot, Frito-Lay, Target Distribution, as well as Maximus. Based on the ridership and the numbers that we were seeing, we expanded that last year to include North Topeka businesses of Reese's, Goodyear, and the Hills Pet Company.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Hills Pet Company, Reese's, and Goodyear does not expire in 2020. That would have another year left on it. But the agreement when we passed the budget with the South Topeka Transit was that with the Go Topeka would subsidize that ridership for the 2018 and 2019 years, with 2020 then transitioning to be subsidized by the businesses. And that is where we are at now, and that's why the recommendation from Go Topeka is not to continue, is that 2020 was to be the year that Frito-Lay, Mars, Home Depot, Target Distribution, and Maximus would then subsidize that ridership. That is subsidized through the Topeka Metro. And so the question that I've asked JUMP members is whether or not the businesses of Home Depot, Frito-Lay, Target, Mars, and Maximus have indicated that they will refuse to work with the Topeka Metro to continue the subsidy. And that's where I think the issue is. The Topeka Metro has indicated without funding from a source, they cannot continue to subsidize it on their current budget. And that is the concern of JUMP, is that there needs to be an identified funding source for Topeka Metro to continue. Did I get it?
That's pretty good.
All right.
And also, Mr. Chairman, is, I noticed from what I've heard is Mars is no longer participating in SOTO.
Mhm.
Is that?
That is correct. Yes.
So I know that we will be taking this up and having it as part of our December JADO budget and discussion, and I look forward to having that discussion.
Okay, and that's in December?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other? Anyone wishing to speak on any comment or any topic? It's been a long day. Mr. Cook?
Never been to a council meeting, have you?
I have. I have. Back in the days when they would go till 1 o'clock in the morning. I was there.
Just to set the record straight, my wife is a very frugal shopper. And, I appreciate all of the hard work that she does in making sure that our household budget stays within its budget. I just want to set the record straight on that.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. I, too, would like to say my wife is very frugal. Do you have anything?
I think my wife would prefer I don't talk about her.
There's the smartest man.
The only thing I did here recently is I attended the award ceremony, fall award ceremony at Sheriff's Department, the LEC, and it was a good event. And they at that event they recognized some people who went above and beyond, and they also promoted a number of their deputies and staff there, so it was a good event. That's it. Next item.
Executive sessions?
I don't think there's a need for an executive session, so we're adjourned. Thank you for your patience. I remember those city council meetings going till 1 in the morning. Yeah.
I'll let you.
And they would televise them up to 10 o'clock.
And I don't know if that's what.
And then